If you'd like online business explained to you in a way that you can actually understand, go to latenightim.com/explain. It's completely free, and I made it just for you. Now, how about an episode? Episode 121. Late Night Internet Marketing. This week on the Late Night Internet Marketing Podcast, we talk about the newly released State of the Blogging Industry report from ConvertKit. Just released this morning. Really interesting statistics for you. Also, we talk about how I got hacked over Christmas and all the work I had to do and what you can do to prevent having the same thing happen to you. All this and more on the Late Night Internet Marketing Podcast.
The Late Night Internet Marketing Podcast.
You've been working for somebody else, but you want a business to run yourself. You want to know how to start and where to begin. Can you get out your comfort zone, my friend? Yes, you can do it right when it's late at night. At the end of the day, your dreams burning inside. So keep it up and you will find that you're building your business one night at a time.
And now, broadcasting late at night from a little studio in the big state of Texas, your host, Mark Mason.
Ladies and gentlemen, 2017 is upon us. There is absolutely no denying it. I have checked the calendar over and over again, and it's here. I don't know where 2016 went, but it's gone. And hopefully you took some time to do what I recommended that you do, the action that I gave you, to reflect on 2016 and just congratulate yourself and be thankful for the things that you were able to accomplish. I know you didn't get everything done that you wanted to get done in 2016. I totally get it. Entrepreneurs never do. We've got more ideas than we have time, and we just don't get everything done. That's okay. And I hope you've also had time to make some serious plans for just crushing 2017. And maybe you're still recovering from the holidays and you haven't done that. I want you to do that this week, because next week we're going to start a couple of weeks where we talk to Ray Edwards about how he was so successful over 2015 and 2016 and what strategies he used, and the strategy that I'll be employing this year to make sure that I actually achieve my goals in 2017. You know, if you're like me, and I think a lot of you are, even if you're afraid to admit it, there's a lot of times when you set goals that you just don't simply accomplish. I mean, this has been a pattern in my life, and this strategy that I have for you in a couple of weeks is really going to help you, I think, tackle those goals for 2017. So we'll get into that in the coming weeks. But for this week, I've got a couple of great items for you, and we're going to start it out with some breaking news.
This week, in the world of internet marketing news.
So just this morning at 8 a.m. Eastern time, this is on, I guess, Thursday, January the 5th, when this is releasing to you. I'm recording it a little bit ahead of time. ConvertKit is releasing their State of the Blogging Industry report. This is a very interesting report, and I suspect that as ConvertKit continues to do this in the years that follow, this will get even more and more interesting. You can get your very own copy of this report at latenightim.com/CK report for ConvertKit report. And basically what it is a report where they surveyed 850 bloggers and gave them a 20-minute survey and asked them all kinds of questions about the ins and outs of their blogging business in 2017. And there are some really interesting results. Now, I'm not going to spoil the whole report for you. I really want you to look at it. It's a beautifully formatted, awesome graphs. It'll really help you figure out sort of where you fit in compared to everybody else in this kind of online business industry. And this focuses on bloggers, and I think they're using that term pretty loosely here, people with a blog. But they found that, surprisingly, 15% of people who consider themselves to be bloggers, that's what they call themselves, also earn more money than the median United States household income based on the census data that's available in 2015. That's just the high watermark that they used. But that's amazing information. And they break all of their responses down, these so-called professional bloggers, the pro bloggers, apologies to Darren there, that are actually making this kind of more than average U.S. kind of income money. They break that down, but they also find, of course, that the other 85% of people, they're not earning more than the median household income. But as the future of blogging, as the up and coming bloggers, their data is also very interesting as well. They look at the diversity of this population and what it is that makes these bloggers happy, what gives them a sense of accomplishment, what platforms they're blogging on, how many visits they have, all this kind of stuff. You may be surprised to know that most bloggers in this big survey have between 1,000 and 10,000 visitors. And if that describes you, that makes you normal. And if it doesn't describe you, if you're in the below 1,000 visitors kind of category, that tells you where you're headed, because that's what's typical in this survey. Talks about how many hours a week they work and all kinds of interesting stuff like that. So I definitely recommend that you go and check this report out. You can get that at latenightim.com/CK report. That's short for ConvertKit report. It'll take you right there. You can download a copy, and you'll be good to go.
It's time to get to work building your internet business. One night at a time.
One night at a time.
Okay, so as I alluded to in the introduction, I had a very eventful holiday break. My intention was not to work on my stuff too much. I had pre-recorded a bunch of podcasts. I was taking time off with my family, trying to get some work done on the late night affiliate course. And out of the blue, I get this email from Google Webmaster Tools, which is now called Google Search Console. And the subject line is hacked content detected on website URL, one of my affiliate sites that I maintain. And the URL is, has something to do with Ninja Gold Boy, Pawan Singh, and a bunch of other stuff that I did not recognize the slug in the URL, but the domain was definitely mine. So I'm thinking, that doesn't sound good. And then another email comes in. A second site of mine has been hacked. And then my wife's site over at ballcapmom.com has been hacked. So I search my wife's site on Google, and sure enough, in the search results, it says, this site has been hacked, may contain malware. And I'm like, oh, great. This is absolutely fantastic. I knew I needed to get to work, because once you're in this situation, the only thing you can do is roll up your sleeves and go solve the problem. So what I wanted to help you with today is, one, I want to tell you exactly what I did. My fix in my case was very, very straightforward. And then number two, I wanted to go over with you the low technology, low tech recommendations for how to keep your WordPress website from getting hacked. Because this is a pretty common problem. I mean, this happens to a lot of people. Now, admittedly, it's never happened to me, okay? But there's a first time for everything, and I know the statistics say lots and lots and lots of WordPress websites get hacked. And so I wanted to help you. When I say low-tech things that you can do, I wanted to help you do the things that you can do without being a turbo geek. If you're a computer guru, you can go Google hardening WordPress websites, and you can do a bunch of things that are too complicated for the average WordPress user. But there's sort of like a list of straightforward low-level things that everybody should be doing. I want to make sure we cover those on this podcast. So when I found out that my site was hacked, I looked at the nature of the hack, and what had happened was hackers had compromised the website and added a tremendous amount of content to the site that they were serving to other places and using to hack other sites. And the CPU load on the server had gone through the roof because there was an enormous amount of traffic through this. Basically, the sites were being used as bots and other things. And when I did an audit of the files that were on the sites, started looking around in the directories on the sites, I found there was just a ton of information on there that I didn't own, and the disk was almost completely full. It was a total mess. Okay. Total takeover of these 17 websites that were on this one server. And luckily, this server happened to be hosted at SiteGround, which I've been talking to you guys a lot about lately, and you can find at latenightim.com/SiteGround. So I phoned up my buddies at SiteGround. Actually, I put in a ticket and I said, hey, I've got this server load problem. Looks to me like the site has been hacked. Can you confirm? They were able to confirm that the site was indeed hacked, and they agreed with my conclusion. And so I started looking back at the logs and stuff, and I was able to determine that this happened a couple of days ago. So very simply, I was able to put in a ticket at SiteGround and ask them to roll the site back, restore a backup from several days ago prior to when I thought the hack occurred based on the activity. Now, this is not a surefire thing because in some cases, the hackers know that this is what you're going to do, and they will exploit the site, and then they'll let that sit dormant for a long time so that your backups are too old to really be of much use to you. You know, if you're blogging all the time and adding content, the last thing you want to do is back up 2 months. But in my case, it had only been a few days, so I backed up a week and told them to restore the entire server, all 17 sites that are on this one server, to its condition a week ago. So they did that very quickly. I must say the customer support at SiteGround was really good, and they handled this very quickly in the middle of the night. It was the middle of the night for me, and probably the middle of the day for them. Excellent customer service, and I was back up and running pretty quickly. But I was back up and running with a website that had been restored to its previous state, which we know can be hacked. I mean, we knew that was the case, right? Because it had been hacked. So the next thing that I had to do was harden the website. And what I wanted to do for you is give you a list of things that you can go do right now today without a lot of technical expertise, with practically no technical expertise, as a matter of fact, so that you can harden your website. Now, if you want to get hardcore, you can do this even more than what I'm going to tell you. I'm just telling you the minimum level of things that you could do. There was an article that I ran across that was based on data from 2014, maybe, from WP White Security. This is a pretty famous white paper that had been published a couple of years ago. I don't have any more current data, but back then, 41% of websites that were hacked through security vulnerabilities on the hosting platform, and 50-something% were hacked through security issues in WordPress or plugins. Okay. So most of the hacks, the vast majority of WordPress hacks, either come through the hosting platform or they come through out-of-date WordPress or out-of-date plugins. Okay. So based on that, I think it's pretty clear the kind of things that you need to go do. And I'm going to give you a list of things here. First thing is, obviously, for recovery purposes, you want to make sure you've got good backups and that those backups are recurring on a regular basis. Now, there are plugins to go do backup. There's a Dropbox plugin, and there's backup strategies that you can pay for. There are free ones. And if you go to the WordPress plugin repository and you search for backup plugins, you'll find several options. I've tried most of them. They're all sort of okay. But there's really nothing that's going to beat a server backup from your hosting provider. I mean, you might choose to also do your own backups. I do that as well, just as sort of a belt and suspenders sort of thing. But when it comes to reliable backups that are reliably stored and easily restored, it's really hard to beat your service provider that's doing your hosting. So check in with your host, see if they provide backups, and see if you can afford that. Sometimes they charge for that, sometimes they don't, but you're going to want to know what your backup situation is and make sure your site is backed up and it's backed up in a way that you know how to restore it easily. That's the first thing. The second thing I need you to do is make sure WordPress is up to date. At the time of this recording, the current version of WordPress is 4.7. I recommend that you get everything updated so that you can run WordPress 4.7. If you've got a reason that you can't update, like a plugin or a theme incompatibility, you need to fix that. Because if you look at the release notes for WordPress, one of the things that the WordPress team is doing all the time is fixing security issues. And so you need to make sure that as these exploits are identified and patched, that you're up to date with that. It seems really obvious, but when you're live living out there on the internet where hackers can randomly search the Google index to find you and your site and then attack it relentlessly where you don't even know they're doing it at 3:00 in the morning, you really need to have the latest protection from WordPress. And those guys, WordPress, they have a big investment in security, and they're doing their very best to harden that as much as possible. The third thing and it's closely related to that, is to make sure that your themes and plugins are completely up to date. And you need to be rigorous about that. And in both of these cases, my recommendation is to turn automatic updates on. Unless you're really good about logging in and updating things when they need to be updated, my recommendation is definitely automatic updates. Now, I know those aren't for everybody. Sometimes that can break things. I'm going to give you an alternative to that here in a minute. But consider, if you're a lazy person or if you don't want to deal with this, anywhere that you can turn on automatic plugin, theme, or WordPress updates, do that. And then related to that is you're only running one theme, and you're probably not changing your theme very often, and you're only running a certain number of plugins, but you may have a bunch of stuff that you've installed that you're not using. Themes that you tried and didn't like, themes that shipped with WordPress, plugins that you tried and you used to use but you're no longer using. I want you to delete all of that junk out of WordPress. Go into your plugin manager, go into your theme manager, control panel, and delete those themes and plugins. We don't need that dead legacy code that you're probably not updating anyway, providing additional points of attack. Just let's get that deleted and get that out of there. Additionally, and related to this, if you don't need a plugin, if you don't really need a plugin, don't use it. I would default to being stingy. Every line of code, even from the very best developers that you add to WordPress, is another opportunity, another point of attack. So my point of view on plugins, both for security and for performance reasons, is to only use plugins if I really need them. I don't try not to go and use every plugin in the world. The fifth thing that I want to offer you is make sure that you do not use admin as a username. This is a commonly understood thing in WordPress. WordPress, as it ships, a lot of times will use admin as the default username. Don't use that. Hackers know that a lot of WordPress installations have admin as a username, and that gives them half of the puzzle, right? If you are using admin as your username, then they know your username. So don't do that. Either delete admin, or if that's a problematic for you, add a new administrative account like Bubba437 or whatever you want to call your account, and change that admin user down to subscriber and harden the password. Make a really, really difficult password on that admin account and never use it again. Make sure you're not using admin as a username for the administrator of your blog. Along with that, harden your password. You can change it often. I recommend that. You can make it very, very hard to guess. I definitely recommend that. And you can consider using two-factor authentication. You know, this kind of thing where in addition to the password, you need an additional piece of information like a secret code or an authenticator application or an SMS text message, some additional piece of information. If you search WordPress plugin repository, there are lots of those now, or at least 4 or 5. One of the most popular ones is the Google Authenticator plugin. You can give that a try. That'll really help you lock things down. You know, I told you that 40% of the attacks, 41% of the attacks or so are coming from hosting. So use the best hosting you can. I recommend that you use hosting that is designed for WordPress, where people who are, you know, on the lookout for this kind of stuff are running the company. A lot of times this is described as WordPress managed hosting, where they're paying attention to these security vulnerabilities. And I definitely recommend that you go with a reputable company. Right now, my recommendation for that kind of thing is SiteGround at latenightim.com/SiteGround. But whatever you decide to use, make sure you're using someone who knows what they're doing. If you're using a homebrew solution or the cheapest thing you could find, that could be a problem for you, and it's going to cost you more money in the long run. And then finally, my recommendation for easy things that you can do is to add your site to Google Search Console, the thing that used to be called Google Webmaster Tools, because they are watching your site and they will notify you as soon as it's hacked, because some of these hacks are a little bit difficult for normal human beings to detect, but Google is constantly scanning your site with malware detection and recognizing that, and that will help you identify any problems that you have on your site. Now, one more thing that I recommend that you can consider is adding a security plugin. Now, personally, in the past, I've gone back and forth on whether or not to use these. Right now, I'm using one, and the one that I'm using across all 17 sites is WordFence. And I'm using the premium version of WordFence, which is a little bit pricey in some cases. You know, it starts off at a price of $100 a year for a single website. And the longer license that you buy, or the more sites that you buy, you get a discount per license. So it gets a lot cheaper if you buy a bunch of them, but that's kind of expensive for a lot of people. But the free version of WordFence security is pretty good, and it has a firewall. It looks for hacking and bots and other kinds of online threats. So it's a good one. And one of the things that it does is it pays attention to whether or not all your plugins and themes and WordPress are up to date. And if they come out of date, if a new version is released, it sends you an email. I really like that feature. There are other really popular and effective plugins like iTheme Security, which used to be known as Better WP Security. That's also very good. And quite frankly, I've not done an exhaustive study of what features these have and which one is best. Securi also has a plugin that they offer. And of course, the Securi guys, they're like WordPress security ninjas. They can also help you if your site has been hacked. And a lot of these plugins have premium services like that. So the Securi plugin is available. And then the fourth one that I can tell you about that I have not used at all is the guys at Automatic have some security features now as part of their all-in-one plugin that they offer called Jetpack. Jetpack has some security features now that you can check out. So those are 4 options that you can look at. And I'll have all of that documented for you in the show notes at latenightim.com/121. So in summary, what I want you to do this week, I want you to do it right now. I don't want you to delay. I want you to go make sure your backups are good, update everything you can find in WordPress. That's your plugins, your themes, and WordPress itself, and delete any of that stuff that you're not using. Any plugins that you can eliminate, I want you to eliminate them. I want you to make sure that you're not using admin as a username on your site. And if you are, I want you to turn the privileges of admin down all the way down to subscriber and lock down the password and never use it again. Make sure your passwords on your administrator accounts especially are super hardened and locked down, and consider using 2-factor authentication there. And I want you to make sure that you've got hosting that you really trust and that your site is listed in Google Webmaster Tools. And finally, my recommendation is that you go install WordFence and see what it has to say about your site. It'll do a scan of your site and make sure there's no malware already existing there. It's a really nice free level of the plugin that they have. Can really help you out. That will make you feel better about where your site is in 2017. Look, you've got these goals for 2017. The last thing you want to do is spend a week or two dealing with 17 hacked websites like I did over Christmas break. Okay, I hope that is helpful to you, and I hope you're off to a great start for 2017. Again, go check out that ConvertKit report at latenightim.com/CK report. That'll really help you understand where you fit in this online business sort of thing, at least in terms of where these bloggers were. Really, really interesting data in there. Harden that website and get ready for some actionable content in the next 2 weeks regarding how to get your goals actually completed in 2017. Until next time, I hope you have an absolutely amazing, off the hook 2017, and I'll talk to you soon. Ciao.
You can do it right when it's late at night.
You've been listening to the Late Night Internet Marketing Podcast.
Be sure to visit latenightpodcast.com today to leave feedback for Mark. Download special bonus content, access the show notes, and more. See you there.
Until then, go and make some great progress on your internet business. One night at a time.
One night at a time.
All right, so a lot of you guys know I'm a science geek, and I'm having more fun doing science with my 10-year-old this week. My wife found this experiment on YouTube where you take a plate and you fill the plate full of colored water, so it's like a dish, not too deep, not as deep as a bowl. So a plate with, maybe a half of inch of colored water in there. And then you put a candle in the center of the plate and you light the candle, and then you cover the candle with a narrow jar, like a vase or something, a vase, if you're from that part of the world or highly educated. And what you find is that the candle will burn, of course, until all the oxygen is burn up inside this container, right? So you've put the jar over the candle, so there's no way for more air to get in. So eventually the candle burns up all the oxygen. And what's interesting is you can see this colored fluid draw up along the candle inside the jar as if being sucked up by a straw. It's really an interesting experiment. I'll put a link to one of the YouTube videos in the show notes, but it's really cool because the cool part, the experiment itself is cool, but the cool part is really the conversation with the 10-year-old that happens after, trying to get him to reason out why the fluid comes up the jar. And of course, the answer is that the fire uses up the oxygen that was inside the jar, and therefore the pressure inside the jar goes down because now the oxygen is gone away. The only thing that's left in there is nitrogen and whatever else is in the air, CO2 and argon or, whatever. And so the pressure inside the jar is less than the pressure outside the jar. So the pressure outside the jar pushes the water into the jar. And having him work that out, kind of Socratically, by asking him questions, how did you figure this out? That's an awesome thing. And so definitely encourage you, if you have any interest in science and you have small kids, or even if you don't, go to Google and YouTube and Google science experiments. There's a ton of really interesting, easy stuff that you can do. And also there's the answers of why it happens the way it happens on there for you, in case you're not scientifically minded. This really expands the mind of these small people, and it's really fun to watch. Ciao.
Late night internet marketing.
Hey, it's Mark again. I wanted to tell you one more time about this absolutely free resource that I have for helping people who are trying to get the big picture for internet marketing, actually get started and understand what all their choices are. If that's not you, there's no more content. You can skip to the end. But if you're someone who came to this podcast because you're searching for how to get started online and you just can't cut through all the noise, I get it. That was me in 2007 when I was trying to get started. There were so many people throwing offers at me that I really couldn't even understand what all the different business models were. I couldn't understand how money moved around on the internet. And I couldn't really get a grip on what direction I wanted to go in so I could figure out how to move forward. I've created a free video resource for you just for that purpose at latenightim.com/explain. In several short videos, I just explained to you what internet marketing is all about and what online business is all about and the different options that you have for starting an online business. There's nothing to buy there. You just sign up for access and you get the videos just like that. So if that's interesting to you, or if you know someone who's in a same situation, send them that link, latenightim.com/explain. And let me know what you think. I'd love to hear what people are thinking that are in the exact same position that I was in more than a decade ago in 2007. In some ways, it seems like yesterday. And in some ways, it seems like an entire lifetime ago. Again, that's latenightim.com/explain.
Late night internet marketing.